As a final part of our discussion of the nature and scope of the problem, we will examine are there any resources to help. These fall into two different categories, web resources and software considerations. One web resource we've already examined. That is the Open Web Application Security Project. As mentioned earlier, there are quite a few references for activities, attacks, code snippets, controls, glossary of terms, etc., which are extremely valuable when considering security aspects for your website. Another very important website is the php.net website, where under documentation, you will find a reference to security. In this section, there's a discussion of installation configuration options. So, for example, installed as a CGI binary, as mentioned earlier, installed as an Apache module. There's a discussion of database security, error reporting, and a variety of other topics. Another website to pay attention to is osvdb.org, which is the open-sourced vulnerability database website. This is extremely important as for the most part we will be using open-source software to facilitate project development. Another important website which will keep you informed is the White Hat Security website. This is the organization that produces the annual Security Vulnerabilities Report. This website can be found at whitehatsec.com. One key to successful website development is to make sure that you keep informed. You can keep informed by visiting these various resources. In terms of software considerations, one very important task is to keep up to date. So, for example, as PHP itself changes, you can visit what is referred to as the changelog. To find the changelog, you go to the Downloads page, find your current release. You will then find, generally towards the bottom of the listing, the changelog. The changelog identifies vulnerabilities which have been identified and fixed. It's also important to recognize that the attacker is aware of these vulnerabilities, and if you fail to keep your software up to date, you will open up your website to a potential attack. In terms of your code, it's very important to exercise what is referred to as version control. There are quite a few version control systems which are available and support PHP. One example would be Git, G-I-T. You'll notice Git is free and open source, and what this does, it allows you to maintain versions of your software and also to develop what are referred to as branches. The advantage to using version control is that if your website is under attack and you suspect that the software is at fault, you can revert to an earlier version, identify what was changed, make the necessary corrections, and then create another version. Version control is also critical when you have multiple developers working on the same website. Other version control systems include Subversion, CVS, Perforce, Clearcase, and quite a few others. Another aspect of software development is the control of dependencies. It's very important to utilize a package manager such as Composer, which allows you to define the dependencies as well as providing an automatic facility for making updates. As an example, with Composer, you create a composer.json file at the top level of your project folder. You then identify the repository maintained by your version control system. Further on down the file, you can identify the required directive and identify the open source packages which comprise your application. In the example that we are examining, this is a case of Zen Framework, which is an open source library of PHP code. The website for Composer itself is located at getcomposer.org. The development of good code is also an aspect of security. The reason why we say this is that well-functioning code provides less opportunities for errors to accrue. For this purpose, there is the PHP Unit project, which is a PHP unit testing framework. If we look down the page a little bit, you'll notice that there is some excellent documentation. In the documentation, there's a description of how to use PHP Unit and to develop various tests and also what are referred to as assertions. One final aspect is to make sure that everything is backed up on a regular basis. For example, with the database from PHP MyAdmin, you could use the export capability to make sure that the database is backed up. In terms of source code, as well as database backups, it's very important to make sure that they are off-site as well as available on-site. So in conclusion, for web resources, keep yourself informed. The various sources you can go to will include OWASP, the PHP.NET website, the Open Source Vulnerability Database, and other websites such as the White Hat Security Organization. In terms of software, it's important to keep up to date. Make sure that you read the change logs and security bulletins. Use version control such as Git, SVN, or CVS. Use package management tools such as Composer to control dependencies. Make sure that you perform regular testing, which could include unit testing to minimize coding errors. And finally, make sure that everything is backed up frequently and off-site. This concludes our discussion of Are There Any Resources to Help?